We made this tutorial based on several requests from our viewers. In this tutorial, we will learn how to create a material transition effect, where one material gradually changes into another through an animation. And for this, we will use a simple procedural shader which is easy to customize, so let us start with the base file for this tutorial. Here, we have already created one very simple sword. And it has two parts, one is this handle, and then we have this blade. We'll now create a material transition effect for this blade, where it will slowly transform from one material to another. So let us turn on the rendered view mode, and we can also enable the HDRI lighting, so that we get a better view for our scene. You can see that we have already created a suitable material for this handle part. Now for this blade part, let us go to the Materials tab, and create a new material. Blender will create a default material with a principled BSDF. We'll work on this in a shader editor. So split the screen into half. Let us keep the viewport as it is in this right side panel, and on this side we'll open the shader editor, side by side. By default, we have a principled BSDF and a material output node. The first thing that we need is, in order to create a changeover from one material to another, we need two different materials that will combine with each other and create an animation effect. You can use any kind of materials here, maybe some procedural materials, or even some image textures. Let us use two simple metal colors. We'll take a blue color for this. We can directly enter the hue as 0.6 and turn up this value field. Let us then increase its metallic value to 1 and reduce this roughness value to 0.2. So right now, the sword has got a blue metal color like this. Next, we have to add the second material. So select this principled BSDF and press Shift-D to duplicate this. To create another material here, let us simply change this base color, maybe to some bright, golden shade. We'll actually enter the hex value of the color directly, FFC125. This will create a gold material. There is a separate tutorial on this channel where we have discussed how to create materials like gold, silver, copper, and bronze. You can take a look into that, the link is in the video description. So we'll go with this value here, and this has the metallic property set as before and also the roughness. To see its effect, connect the output of this node to the material output node. We can see the golden sword like this. To make it little better, go to the Render Properties tab. Turn on Screen Space Reflections and expand it. Then, turn off this half resolution trace and change this max roughness value to 0.2. This will make the golden material look better, but it's not very important. Now, we need to join these two materials, so obviously we need a mix shader. But we cannot just mix them like that, it will produce a static result. We need to apply some transition logic between them. Let us go to the Add menu, and from the Shaders group, add one mix shader. Then connect this first material to the first input socket, and this material to the second socket, and connect its output to the material output node. With this setup, these two materials are mixing at a ratio of 50-50, and the sword currently looks like made of steel material. But we need only one material at a time, so this mix factor should be such that it will render only one material, based on the height of a shader point on our target object. And to achieve that, we need to add one guiding object, which will move along the height of this sword through animation. It itself will remain invisible, but it will guide this mixing factor to give us a dynamic mix of the materials. So let us add an object, maybe just a plane. We'll resize it by 0.2. Now, we need to move this guiding plane along the height of this sword. And it will trigger the transition from one material to the other while moving along this object. Let us select it, and in its node setup, we need few more things, so go to the Add menu and add one Texture Coordinate node. Now the important step, in the object field of this, select the plane, which we just added here. With this, if we take the object output of this node, we will get the coordinates of each shader point of our sword with respect to this plane object. So go to the Add menu, and under Converter, add one separate XYZ node. Then connect the object output to this vector input. We'll now get these three coordinates for each point on our sword with respect to the guiding plane. Now we have to decide which one of these to be used. Since the sword is in a vertical position, we'll use the Z coordinate value. But in your case, the object may have a different orientation, so pick up another axis among the three, whichever is suitable. We'll check if this Z value is below this plane, or above this. Any part below this plane should have this second material, and anything above this should have this first material. So go to the Add menu, and under Converter, add one math node. Then, change the function to less than. Now, connect this Z coordinate to the first input value of this node. And for the threshold, let us enter only 0. So, we'll use this as the FAC value. Any shader point below this plane will get this yellow shader. And anything above this plane will fail at this comparison, so it will get this blue material. Let us connect this math node to the FAC input of our mix shader. Now, if we move this plane upward along the Z-axis, you will notice that the material for the bottom part of our sword is transforming into gold, while the part above the plane remains in blue color. So a transition happens in this sword's material as the plane moves up or moves down. We can create an automatic transition effect with keyframes on its movement. So we are currently at frame number 1. Let us go to the object properties. We'll make its Z location value as 0. We have to then keyframe this. Let us then go to frame number 50. We'll take this guiding plane upward, somewhere little above its top end, and we'll insert a keyframe here. Now, if we go back to the first frame and run the animation, you'll see that there is a transition happening on the sword from blue material to gold material. We can hide this guiding plane for a cleaner view. But it also looks little artificial. It will look very glamorous if we add some magical effect or some glow at the transition area, right where the changeover is happening. So select the sword again. We'll add few more nodes to implement the glow effect. First select this math node and press Shift-D to duplicate it. Change its function to compare. And connect the same Z value to its first input socket. We'll compare it with 0, and this epsilon is the amount we allow on both sides of 0 to define the transition area. Let us enter point 1 here, or maybe point 2. Now, this comparison test will pass only if a shader point lies either 0.2 unit above or 0.2 unit below the changeover point. So this node will give us a small area around the border line between the two materials where we'll create a glow. Let us select this mix shader and duplicate it. We need to make some room here so that the nodes fit well. We'll use this mix shader as the final output of our setup, so connect it to the material output node. Okay, let us then connect this compare node to this FAC input. If this comparison fails, it should display the material as per this old output, no change in that path. But we get a black area around the transition point, we'll add the glow here. So go to the Add menu and under Shader, add one emission shader and place it here. Let us connect its output to this second socket. So for this transition here, we'll get a glow from this emission shader. Let us increase its strength value to 20. Now, to get the glow effect, go to the Render Properties tab and enable this bloom option here. We are currently in EV. Let us increase this intensity to 0.35. And we can also increase this threshold value to 2, so that any other light does not create any shining effect in this scene. If we now play the animation from the beginning, the glow effect will work like that. We can now close the shader editor, as its purpose is over. So, we are done with the main tutorial, but if you want to add a reverse action as well, first unhide the guiding plane and select it as well. Let us then go to frame number 100. Then go to the object properties, change the Z location to 0, and don't forget to insert a keyframe. We can hide the plane. Now, we'll first change the animation length to 100. If we now play it, it will go upward creating a transition, and again come down, creating the reverse change. The technique will work flawlessly, even if you rotate this object. First unhide this guiding plane. Then select the sword and the plane, both together. You can now rotate them in any angle, while still keeping the sword upright. Let us then hide the plane again, and play the animation from the beginning. The transition effect will still happen correctly in both the directions. but the glow is not reaching the top end of the sword. So we have to go to frame number 50. Here we have to slightly increase this Z location, maybe to 3. And reassign the keyframe. Let us now play it again. The transition effect is now perfect, along with the magical glow. If you keep the sword in a horizontal position, you should use the X or the Y axis instead. We have used the Z axis because our sword is more or less aligned to the vertical plane. You can use any textured material as well, the basic setup will be the same. That's all for today. I hope you like this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.